When I was in Russia, we were an international group. I was studying at the university. We were always going out and always partying and, of course, drinking a lot of vodka. Nobody has the right to tell you what you should do, how you should eat. Nobody should really interfere with your diet, or nobody should point the finger at something. People are so like, what the hell? You go to McDonald's every day and you're telling me that I'm eating yogurt? I'm like, okay, whatever. Then I don't say that I'm vegetarian or I don't say that I'm vegan.
My name is Parth and you're listening to Dhvani. I'm always very curious about food, diet, exercise, the perceptions that go along, veganism. And if you have been an avid listener of this podcast, the second episode was about veganism, where I spoke to two people, one from Turkey and one from Netherlands, about their perception of veganism and how difficult it was to be a vegan in today's world. And then the 11th episode is about food, exercise, diet, and the perceptions that go along with all that. And one of our listeners decided to speak to me about her perception of food, diet, and how she thinks that mind and body go along. She has been a model and a ballet dancer, so she understands the value of discipline in her life, and that is what she connects to her food and diet. During our discussion, we spoke about many different and interesting topics. One of them being that how people are always worried about labels and ideologies and all of that, forgetting that what their body is telling them, and how it is very important to communicate from within. I really like this Sanskrit word called swadhyay, which means self-study. Both of us believe that it starts from studying our own self, understanding our own body in the ways which we often neglect. So hopefully you will enjoy this discussion as much as I did. So this is the part 1 of our discussion. The next part would be coming out next week. Please make sure to listen to both of them, and also make sure to listen to the previous episodes. You might enjoy them. So here we go.
Well, I'm Sofia Manna, I'm 25 years old. I'm currently in Amsterdam. I'm here today to talk about fasting, or in general, I would say I'm here to talk about the good effects that a proper care of our body does. So I used to work as a model in my life. I'm a runner. I used to be a professional runner. So for me, and when I was a little girl, I practiced ballet for a lot of years. So I would say that I always had a very strong connection between me and my body. So in a way, this is very good because you are also connected to yourself. But of course, when it's a double, it can have a double effect, because when you're very connected to your body, you also tend to put the stress that you have from the outside world and from life, I would say.
Right.
I think that when you're very connected to your body, you also tend to put a lot of stress on it, even unconsciously. Sometimes subconsciously, sometimes you're aware of this. But anyway, I think being connected to our own body, it's anyway very important. And therefore, I've always been very interested in East practices, I would say. Also because of my dad, because of his interest in India, in the Chinese medicine, and all these kind of non-Western or non-canonical practices and way of living the body in a way.
Okay. So you said you are in Amsterdam right now. Where you are originally from? Because that will also put some context into things,
sure.
I guess.
I'm Italian. I was born in Gubbio, or let's say in Perugia, which is a town in the very middle of Italy, and it's a very, very green area. It's a very hilly and green side of Italy.
Okay.
And therefore, for sure, like the fact that I was growing up in a green area, that probably kind of influenced my personality as well, and also this correlation between a better awareness of myself in a way and of the surroundings, the natural elements, I would say.
Yeah. You make this very interesting point that I have not actually thought about much, because people like me and all the people that I see in the internet, and the popular idea is to how to follow a diet or how to discipline of an exercise, and so it's the other side of the spectrum always. Like, I'm not disciplined enough and I have to make myself disciplined. But you mentioned about this thing where a person can overdo things.
Yeah.
Because that's something that people don't think about so much, that can you overdo these things? You certainly can. If you talk about eating, there is something, because I remember when we were talking about this discussion, you told that you were very skinny at one point. So tell me about if there has been one particular incident, story or trigger that might have, motivated you to look back and to rethink things.
Yeah, for sure. I've realized that I needed to be more careful with myself and with my body when I was in Russia. And that was a very, peculiar period of my life. First of all, because it was a very different country with a very different eating perspective, I would say, with a very different habits and environment and climate and culture. And that created a sort of confusion with me and my body in a way. But in a way, and also it was a very, not very healthy lifestyle, because we were an international group. I was studying at the university, but we were all in an international group, and we were always going out and always partying and of course drinking a lot of vodka. And I realized that my body was not really happy, was not taking that change in a positive way, and I started to lose a lot of weight because of that. But in a way, that unhealthy situation was good for me, because in that stressful moment of my life, or in that weird moment of my life, I started running properly. I started to put more attention to my body. I started exercising more. I started to go to the gym more, and I kind of add back what was the ballet when I was a kid. So I kind of add back that discipline, that self-care, that self-attention that I used to have when I was dancing when I was a kid. I don't know, in a way, people don't realize how much stress from the outside we're putting in our bodies. But the thing is that we don't have to take that stress in a victim way. So we don't have to just accept it passively, because otherwise we will always be kind of threatened by life. Like our body, our well-being will always be threatened by life if we don't do something in order to control it. Because control is a word that people don't like, is a word that people don't kind of accept, because there's this idea that, oh no, it should come natural and everything should come natural. But actually, when you think about it, nothing in our life is that natural anymore. So the idea that we are naturally inclined to take care of our body in this kind of lifestyle that we're living, so we're not in the forest anymore, we are in cities, we are driving, we are in front of computers for very long hours. So it's not true that it's natural anymore. So I think this idea, a bit of control and self-awareness of our body and of our well-being, it's definitely something that we should consider more.
Right. And I think that the self-awareness that you talk about is a very, I don't know exactly myself that how it starts to happen, but it takes maybe some time or some kind of experimentation that you would have to do with yourself.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you my case, like I have never put any visible effort on anything like till date. I am into sports. Okay. So sports is something that automatically helps me in, figuring out a lot of things. So I never paid any separate attention on what I am eating or what I am doing as exercise, what, which muscle I want to build upon. But gradually and again, like you, in my case also, when I was supposed to cook for myself for the first time, when I was like, okay, if I don't cook, I won't be able to eat. That kind of a situation happened with me at one point.
I see.
Then I understood a lot of things about myself, about my body, the timing of things. So a lot of experimentation happened, and then I understood that, okay, this is how my body behaves to this kind of food, to this kind of exercise, to this kind of activity. So has there been something like that? Is there any experiment that you did when you understood that, okay, this is something that works for me, might not work for everybody?
For sure, what you're saying on the note of experiment, this is a very interesting thing that you said, because for sure experimenting with our body, it's something that at some point has to take place, because the most recent research says that actually we are all very different. There's no organism that is the same of another one. So this idea that a diet, the classic diet, works for everybody, it's not really a thing anymore. It's not really, it cannot be taken as the Bible. You know what I mean? It cannot be taken as something absolute, because it's not. And for sure, what works for me doesn't work for you. There are some main general lines that we can all follow. And for sure, eating more veggies is, it's a classic and it will always work.
Yeah, by default, yeah.
Yeah, but of course some bodies like behave better if they have more carbs, and other bodies behave better if they have more fats. It's really related to genetics. I read a lot of these researches because of my self-interest, and it's incredible how far they have gone into experimentation. Said that, for instance, fasting doesn't work for everybody. Not only that, it could be also bad for some. At the same time, the same goes for sports. Not every sport is good for everybody. I love running. I love sports where there's endurance, because my body works well in movement. But other people really cannot stand running, for instance. And what we should understand is that maybe we should try more things, and we shouldn't be afraid of this, because personalizing our own well-being, it's like something that goes with life, you know what I mean? It's something like, what do you like to do? And we should ask the same thing to our bodies. What do you like? What is good for you? What makes you behave properly and perform in life properly? I see the body a bit like, in a performative way as well, because I also believe, as the ancient Greek philosophers said, that like the Latins as well, mens sana in corpore sano. So if the body is not performing well, your mind won't perform well. It's something that also for our own success in life.
So, like in the Indian context, and I think in the world context, breakfast is such an important meal of the day and all that, you know. And I think from my, as far as my memory can go in my childhood, I was never interested in breakfast. Like, I'm a foodie. Otherwise, I'm a foodie. But breakfast is something that for years and years, my mom just forced me into eating before going to school. I had to do it, and I did it for a very long time. Even back in college, I used to eat breakfast because I was in that zone of
mindset.
In mindset. But at one point, I was like, okay, let me try for a week, for a month, to not eat breakfast, and let's see what happens. And this is something that I cannot tell my mom, of course. She would, like, I always lied about this thing, you know, whenever she asked. But then I figured out that it's better, you know. My mornings are more fresh, I'm more agile, I'm more aware about things. And then I understood the science behind it, that there are some, you know, when your body goes into starvation, there are some hormones that secrete. So those kind of things happen. So I imagine culturally, was it same for you at your home in your childhood? How do Italian parents function? That's what I want to understand.
No, I totally understand what you say about breakfast. And I had that problem, like, it's not just like that I had the problem with my mom. I had that problem with a lot of friends of mine that, of course, they were kind of worried because I was very, very skinny at the time. But at the same time, I was still in a phase of experimentation. So another thing that I would like to say here is that nobody has the right to tell you what you should do, how you should eat. And as long as you're a conscious, aware adult, nobody should really interfere with your diet, or nobody should point the finger at something. Because as long as you do stuff consciously, I think we are all kind of entitled to try what is best for us. So of course, like when I started fasting, or when I started like reducing some elements in my diet, like people were like, oh, of course, my friends were like, oh, Sofia, you're such a fixated, you're such an addict, you're what are you doing? Why do you always have to try new stuff? Because I've always been the one that tried new stuff in general, and with food as well. But because Italians tend to, I don't know, have a very classical breakfast. For us, it's like croissant and coffee. Well, research says it's not super healthy, of course, and well, it's kind of understandable as well. But with fasting, that breakfast is something that doesn't really make sense. And like with knowledge in general about macronutrients, it's not the best, because if we want to go a bit more into fasting, I mean, the whole concept behind it is to keep the body clean, is to keep the body empty in a way so that it can burn ketones instead of glucose, right? So if the first thing in the morning you do, if you give tons of glucose to your body, then of course it's gonna use that fuel and not ketones, and yeah, in a way it's lower down your entire system.
Right. Have you experimented with other types of fasting as well, like except for intermittent fasting?
Honestly, the max I could do was 24-hour fasting, and I didn't go farther than that. There were periods in my life where I lowered the calories intake a lot, when I tend to I have a plant-based diet. That is something that I do in general. I wouldn't consider myself a vegan or a vegetarian completely, because I don't really stick to an ideology or to, I don't know, something that is, like ideological good or bad. You know what I mean? I'm also not a supporter of that, because I think it's not really realistic in a way.
Yeah, I think that even the plants and whatever we eat are not any less violent than the meat that we eat, because there's one guy I listen to, he puts this very nice perspective that even the grain that you are having today is built upon lands which was habitated by animals, or it was a jungle at some point, so that jungle was taken off to make your farm.
Yeah.
In some or the other way, that violence happens. That's something that I also think about a lot, that my ideology is a little different regarding that, because I'm a vegetarian, and not for the reason, like I would like that animals are not killed, but this is not a reason that I'm a vegetarian. That's what I'm saying. So you have a plant-based diet. That's because of the nutrients value, right?
Yeah, of course. I also don't want animals to be killed. Let's be honest here. Of course, I have some sort of belief or some sort of my own personal view upon what is better to eat in 2020 as humans. Right. So I also listen to a lot of researchers that says, and also like just by studying some biographies of successful people, if you go and look at their diet, they're all vegetarian. And yeah, it can be a case. I don't think it's like a case, because actually they said in many cases these successful people in different fields, from technology to artists, even in the past, even Leonardo da Vinci was vegetarian. I mean, and it was, we're not talking about yesterday, we're talking about a couple of centuries ago. Yeah. So I would say it's a mix. It's not just because you don't want animals to be killed. I believe that in 2020 is more like being realistic. So do we really need that kind of protein in our bodies? We don't. There's no evidence that we do actually need meat in our diet. And also, if we talk about like from an environmental perspective, it's clear, it's well researched, is a fact that meat consumption is a great environmental issue, because you simply need more water and more
resources.
Soil more resources to produce 1 kilo of meat compared to 1 kilo of spinach, let's say. So to me, it's, as I said, this is a part of the discussion, and I personally kind of take it into account, but I don't want to make a point just out of it, because I also understand and I also see that a lot of people kind of don't want to see that side.
Yeah.
So if we simply put it in like health and fitness perspective or well-being perspective, that is also something that it's easier for a lot of people to understand. So that's why I don't say I'm a vegetarian fully or I'm a vegan fully, because I'm not. Sometimes, for instance, it happens that I can eat a bit of fish or I eat some yogurt. So that's why I never like make statements about it, because otherwise people are always ready to say, oh, but you ate, I don't know, yogurt.
Exactly. Yeah. I know.
I don't understand why people are so like, what the hell? You go to McDonald's every day and you're telling me that I'm eating yogurt. I'm like, okay, whatever. Then I don't say that I'm vegetarian or I don't say that I'm vegan. But that's the point with things. People tend to be ideological and rigid and
right.
very like judgmental about things, very pointing at the flaws of things, when actually they should see what is better for themselves.
Exactly.
And before talking about what is better for others, but at least from themselves.
So that was part 1 of my discussion with Sophia. Next week you can listen to the second and final part of this discussion. It's gonna be as interesting as this part was. I really wish to have such meaningful and deep discussions with more and more people. So if you think you also have something that you would like to discuss with me, please reach out to me at info@dhvani.co.in. You can log on to the website, which is dhvani.co.in/podcast. You can send me voice notes on Facebook, or you can write to me on Instagram as well. All those details are mentioned in the show notes. The show was hosted and produced by me. My name is Parth Chauhan. The theme music of the show was created by Cutie Honey Bunch. The logo of Dhvani was designed by Soumya Kark. Dhvani podcast can be found on all major podcatching platforms like Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, JioSaavn, and all the other podcasting platforms. So please go ahead and subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's very important. You must also rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. That would help me as well. If you like what you hear, you can support me by buying me a coffee. The link of that is also in the show notes. Until the next time, next part, next Wednesday, take care, eat well, goodbye, ciao.